Welcome back, everybody. This is Johnny with TigerBomb MMA, and today I'm going to go over UFC Vegas 101, Dern versus Ribas 2, giving you my quick thoughts and predictions on the entire card. It's been a few weeks since the last time we saw some UFC, so I'm not going to dilly-dally. I'm going to get right into the fights because I am more than ready for some MMA action and for it to be a main event starring two ladies who have fought before, both of which I'm a big fan of. I'm more than excited for this card, so let's get started with this card itself. First fight of the night, we've got a short notice bout at lightweight. We've got Joe Soleki, currently no odds on Joe Soleki, and Arulo Tajik Eagle Aliev. And Aliev, 24 years old, making his return after a leg injury, which I yet to know what happened to his leg, but his entire leg was in some sort of brace. I'm assuming it was pretty bad. But 24 years old, coming back after a 2-year layoff, I'm expecting him to look fine, right? He's 24, he can recover fine. Joe Soleki, unfortunately for him, it's a bad matchup. Despite him taking this on short notice, more or less to try to save his job, being on a 2-fight losing streak, he's been fighting similar opponents, guys that are wanting to take him down. The Tajik Eagle is a reference to Khabib Nurmagomedov because that's how Narulo Aliev fights. He will take you down, ground and pound you. Not a huge threat on the mat when it comes to submissions, especially against Joe Soleki, who will be looking to catch Narulo Aliev in some sort of submission himself. But I think Aliev, he has the proper skill set on the mat to avoid anything that Soleki might throw at him. In his debut against Alves, he did get caught in a very tight submission that he was able to work his way out of in the guillotine. So for me, I expect Aliev to kind of show a better staple of himself and a more refined skill set. I want to see a little bit more from him on the feet, which I would expect from him, being that he's been gone for 2 years. I would expect that his boxing and his kickboxing has improved. But ultimately, I think with Soleki making this on short notice, he's going to do whatever he can to try not to get finished here. Give me Aliev by a decision. I think he just avoids everything. Rinse and repeat takedowns. He will play with him on the feet. I think he's comfortable enough to not be, frightened of the firepower of Joe Soleki, which of that there's really none. But give me Aliev by a decision here. Next bout, we've got Victoria Dudakova versus Fatima Kline. Kline minus 800. That line on Kline is not fine. I don't like it. It's an overcorrection, if you will, of her making a debut at a higher weight class. She's fighting at 115, which is her actual weight class. At 125 against Gadzhiyasulov, she looked pretty good in defeat. Even landed some good shots on her and even got a takedown on her, but ultimately just got out-muscled by the vicious grappler. But I think in this specific occasion, she will beat the crap out of Dudakova. I am looking forward to seeing what a plus 550 Dudakova looks like. If I'm being honest with you, I've not been impressed by her style. She's just a rinse and repeat grappler, but her striking is serviceable. What I didn't like in her last fight against Sam Hughes, despite the fact that she gassed out, is that even though in my eyes she was winning the exchanges on the feet, she could not get it out of her head to go for the takedown, even though they were incredibly unsuccessful. So visually she was losing, and then on top of that she was actually losing because she was just incredibly gassed. But give me Fatima Kline to win this one by decision. You go back and you look at a regional scene, not a big finisher. She will go for subs, but at this matchup, I think she is the better, more impactful striker, more comfortable on the feet. Boxing is clean. Feint game is good. Jiu-jitsu is very, very good. Give me Kline to win this one by a decision, or if Dudakova has not addressed her gassingness, more than likely a submission late, either round number 2 or round number 3. So give me Kline by a decision. Next bout, we've got Magomed Gadzhiyasulov versus Bruno Lopes. Lopes making his debut after a very rocky stint in the Dana White Contender Series. He went 1-1. Ultimately, the last time that he fought in the Contender Series, he was granted a contract. Unfortunately, I didn't think he deserved it because, the guy that he fought in Mikhail Saziahani, don't know if I pronounced that right, don't care, but the guy he fought was very predictable. He was spamming overhand rights, and he even dropped at one point Lopes. And my biggest issue with Lopes, despite me thinking he's actually the better fighter here than Gadzhiyasulov, and he's plus 150, and the comeback on Gadzhiyasulov is minus 175. The problem is he does not move his head. He's very unathletic. He's a tank of a man. He's strong, but I think he's going to need to bully Gadzhiyasulov to get a decision here or a victory. I think that Lopes, if he survives, he can get more than likely like a late finish, because Gadzhiyasulov himself, I think he's a fraud. 9-0 as a fraud. The dude, he's very fast on the feet, very good kicks. He's got the wrestling background, but I'm not impressed by the guy. I even tried to fade him live against Ribeiro after his leg got kicked in, which Lopes should look to leg kick here, definitely, which he will. But I'm assuming Gadzhiyasulov would have addressed that, and he's not going to, make that same mistake. To me, Gadzhiyasulov, he's probably going to be the faster guy. Despite the fact that I think he's a fraud, I'm going to pick him by round number 1 knockout. I think the speed of Gadzhiyasulov and his punches and his kicks, the lack of movement from the head of Lopes is just going to be there all day. And as long as Gadzhiyasulov does not gas himself out beating the crap out of Lopes, I think he takes this one comfortably. Next bout, we've got at flyweight, we've got Ernesta Kareckaite versus Nicole Caliari. Minus 230 on Ernesta. Comeback on Caliari, plus 190. Biggest issue here is that there's a huge height and reach disadvantage for Caliari. I think she's the better, more well-rounded fighter. She's 8-2, very, very physically strong despite her height. Very good in the clinch, likes to get her takedowns in the clinch. But for me, I think if Kareckaite is to really evolve her game, if she starts implementing a very strong clinch of her own, where she will just bully this girl against the cage and knee her to the body, avoid the takedowns. Key point is avoid the takedowns. Kareckaite has been taken down by a 5'3" girl in the prior coming into the UFC against Latilia Blot. She fought her twice, went to a split decision, I believe, and a draw with this girl. And this girl was able to take her down, and she's pushing 40 or is 40. I think at the time she was pushing 40. So a very young, strong, gifted Caliari can make it interesting. But ultimately, though, if Kareckaite has made those proper improvements in her grappling and counter wrestling, I think that's primarily what she needs to work on. Even when she got taken down by Barbosa and even put in a bad position, both getting mounted and on top of that, getting her back taken, she survived that very well. I was very impressed by that. Cardio is going to be there. I think if Caliari does have any success early, which I'm assuming she will, it will be Ernesta taking over round number 2 and round number 3 to win a decision here. As long as she does not give up unfortunate takedowns in between, I think she's going to win this one by a decision. For the heavy-handed, allegedly, Kareckaite, not much of a power threat there. Ultimately, I think that she's just going to win this using her volume at range. And by God, I want to see her clinch this girl and knee her to the body to make it much more comfortable for her. So give me Kareckaite to win this one by a decision. Not a fan of the line. I'm just going to sit back and watch it. Next bout, we've got Preston Parsons versus a very short notice Jacoby Smith. Now, any other time, Preston Parsons making a fight here against a very more so green. He's 9-0 in Jacoby Smith. The thing is that his overall background in martial arts is wrestling. He has everything he needs, despite the fact he's may or may not making this fight off of the couch. He's got a very high wrestling pedigree, OSU, Division I wrestler. The guy's a stud, right? And he loves to strike. He's got power in the punches. Ultimately, for me, this is a very bad matchup for Preston Parsons. It just makes it lesser of a bad matchup because it is Jacoby Smith making his UFC debut on short notice. But it's very ludicrous for me to think that Jacoby Smith was not training. He's a very jacked young gentleman. I expect him to make 170. Ultimately, I think he can even make 155 if he does dedicate himself to the sport a bit more. He's even gone up to 185 and fought some bums there, but he destroyed that bum. Parsons, I got a love-hate relationship with him. I think he's one of these guys who I think he is very talented, very good on the feet, but he doesn't know how good he is on the feet. I harp about that all the time, but he loves to go for takedowns. It's like that's his option A, B, C, Z, and in between he might throw a few kicks, but his jiu-jitsu is very good. I just don't see Smith losing. For me, I got Smith to win this fight roughly around the 220 mark of round number 1 by knockout. And we'll see what happens, man. I like Jacoby Smith, and for Preston Parsons, him taking this fight on short notice, against Jacoby Smith, I don't think it's a very good idea. I think he had a better time fighting Andreas Gustafsson, who probably would have broken him eventually, but I think he would have had a better, optically better fight than against Jacoby Smith, where he's going to stuff all the takedowns and just pressure Parsons, which is very unfortunate for that being his nickname. But give me Jacoby Smith to get his first UFC debut knockout and also probably more than likely a performance of the night. So next bout here, we've got Thiago Moises, Trey Ogden at 155, Moises minus 175, come back on Ogden plus 145. I went back and forth on this one because they match up kind of well. Each guy kind of has what the other one needs to, let me rephrase that. Each man has the ability to beat the other man based off of one of their attributes. For example, Trey Ogden, his wrestling, top notch. I think he's perfected that kind of lull you to sleep with little jabs here and there, kind of make you come to his range, and then he'll shoot for that double. And when he does get you to the ground, he's very good at controlling you. That is his primary gift. That I will talk about control games later on, but his control game on the mat is very solid. He is just the white Aljo. He'll backpack you. He'll get top control. He will get very solid mount position on you, and he's very good at keeping mount. Sometimes people can't keep it. His jiu-jitsu game is solid. I like it. Thiago Moises, better striker. I think he's very physically strong. I think he's just better than Trey Ogden in every facet. I think he can stuff the takedowns, which I'm positive he will. The problem with Moises is, for me anyways, I've assessed this man, and he gives me this mental quitter type of vibe that I can never be confident in betting him. And what I mean is that I've seen this guy on multiple occasions, at least 2 occasions, kind of give a fight away, a fight that was very winnable for him, where he just did not bite down on his mouthpiece and try to make this a fight for him. He's very accepting in my eyes of a man that is put in a position where he's probably outmatched, and he will not go for it. And I've got my theories about that. I will wait for another video to talk about it, because in this fight, it's a very winnable fight for him. And I'm going to pick him to win by decision, but I would not advise betting Thiago Moises unless you know something specifically. But for me, I think Thiago is going to need to attack the leg of Trey Ogden early. Bahamundes did it, and it kind of stifled him for the remainder of the fight. So Thiago Moises attacked the legs early. I think that's going to be the key point of victory for Moises. On top of that, avoiding the takedowns and pressuring Trey Ogden without putting yourself in that close enough range for him to drop down for a single or a double and put you in any sort of danger. But even then, Moises' jiu-jitsu, I think, is much better. Visually, it's better. I can't say because I've never, grappled with him, but just visually, Moises' black belt is a lot darker in my eyes, in my opinion, than Trey Ogden. So give me Moises by a decision. Next bout here, we've got at middleweight, the debut of Marco Tulio. Very, very many of these Contender Series guys making their debuts. And the problem with that, at least for me, is that these debutants from the Contender Series often don't really pan out. It's very safe sometimes just to bet the opposite of the Contender Series guy. Unfortunately, he's fighting Ihor Potieria, and he is Ukrainian bum. He is plus 350 against Tulio. A guy is 12-1, trains out of Shuto Box. Minus 450 is just ridiculous to me. I think this is a much closer fight, at least on paper. The problem is, when I say on paper, when Ihor starts fighting, it might start looking like it's going to be minus 600 for Tulio. Tulio, he's very wild. He is there to get countered. I like Potieria's boxing and the way he's progressed. Came into the UFC, he was a fraud, right? He's a huge fraud. Yeah, I've never been a fan of Potieria, but what I can say about the guy is he has definitely made the adjustments to try to improve himself in every facet of MMA, not just going out there and just, running through bums. The problem in this fight is if he cannot land on Tulio, I think Tulio is just more physical than he is. He is definitely the harder puncher. Just wild. I don't like that wildness at minus 450. I will pick him to win by knockout in the second round because, of course, it is Ihor Potieria. But it pains me to say I think that Ihor is kind of live here. I believe his striking is just more clean and maybe not as effective because he might land very nice jabs and straight right hands on Tulio. But if Tulio lands just one looping telegraphed overhand right that hurts Potieria, then what are we going to do there? Our plus money is looking like garbage. So give me Tulio. I would expect that Chute Box is going to have a very grappling heavy game plan here, which they should. I think if you just make Ihor very uncomfortable backing him up and get him to the ground, you can have your way with him. His ground game's not great. His takedown defense has improved, and Tulio's takedowns themselves kind of suck. But ultimately, if he mixes things up well, use your athleticism, and you can beat Ihor Potieria. It's just, again, the striking is where it scares me a bit if you're planning on parlaying this guy. I don't think he's a lock. I don't think he, honest to God, I don't think he deserves to be in the UFC. I don't say that because he's dating Norma Dumont and I'm salty. I really don't think he's quite ready yet. And that's what kind of bothers me, what irks me. And he might be ready. He might 100% be ready if he can beat Potieria, which I expect him to do. Again, not sold on the guy quite yet. I want to see a little bit more from him. But moving on, we've got Jose Johnson versus Felipe Bunes. Minus 225 for Johnson. Come back on Bunes is plus 180. I like Bunes. And when I usually say that I like a fighter, it's because I'm going to pick against him. I like the guy. He's 35 years old, but he's fighting at flyweight. And, he trains with the Pitbull brothers. He's got a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He should look to wrestle and grapple here against Johnson. The problem being is that Johnson has improved over the years. I can tell you tons of stuff about Johnson, how he's fought at 145, 135, and now at 125. And I can spend all day talking about this guy. But ultimately, the product that I'm seeing now from Johnson is a much more improved and, granted, better fighter than I've seen in the past. He's still 29 years old, and I've seen the improvements. He was a guy that you could take down and couldn't really get back up. He's improved his sweeps, his get-ups. His submission game is very dangerous, and him being that long in this division is going to benefit him. Granted, he's not going to have the reach advantage that I would expect because apparently Bunes has got some big-ass arms too. 71 inches for Bunes. The comeback on Johnson is 71 and a half. But the legs of Johnson are going to be there. He's going to keep the body. He's going to attack the body of Bunes, slow him down. Very similar game plan that I would expect to what Joshua Van had against Bunes. But I like Johnson in this spot. I can expect him to win by a finish. It would suck to see Bunes get submitted, so I will take him to actually beat him by knockout. I would expect maybe round number 2 or 3. Johnson's pressure, his pace, his length is just going to give Bunes problems. Now, Johnson's not opposed to getting knocked out. He's been knocked out plenty of times and out cold, but that was higher weight classes. I just like what I've been seeing more from Johnson over the years, like just the improvements, right? From a guy that I just would see not be able to get back up to now actually being able to use butterflies and sweeps and just try to work his way back up. I've been impressed by the guy. So I think at this point, the youth, the speed, the boxing of Johnson's going to win him this fight. Second round knockout for Johnson. Next bout, Punahele Soriano versus Uros Medic at 170. And it's crazy to think that Medic was a 155er at one point and Punahele was a 185er because Medic is going to look bigger. At 170, Puna is not, he just doesn't look as juicy, you know what I'm saying? He's just not as thick. And boy was a thick boy at 185. But he's made the proper dietary adjustments, definitely. And his cardio seemingly improved. The problem with Puna is that he's plus 165, minus 200 for Medic. The plus 165 is very tempting because I think here's the things about Puna. Very predictable. Terrible striking, but he's got just that speed in that left hand, and if he does land that left hand, it is a problem. His wrestling is definitely he's got the wrestling background, but he doesn't use it often, and it would serve him well in this fight against Medic. From the tape, definitely Medic is cleaner on the feet. He's the bigger guy. The problem I have with Medic, and I'm not certain about it, is how good is his gas tank? Certainly. Because I can see him fight Semmelsberger at altitude, and he looks fantastic. His cardio looks great at 170. But then I see him fight Orobai on short notice, where he should have the overall but the cardio advantage since Orobai took it on short notice. And this 155er is gassing him out just by over wrestling. Yes, he did look good early on, hurting Orobai. Some might say even nearly finishing him. But if a Comet from 1000 BC could not finish Orobai, Medic was just, it's a matter of time. The issue that I have is I'm not certain about his cardio. If Punahele, who is another guy that can take shots and will probably look to grapple here, if he can survive Medic's onslaught, because again, Medic better on the feet, cleaner, better footwork, the obvious nature of I'm going to hit you with the left hand, winging it from Soriano is going to be obvious to Medic. I think he can avoid it. It's just that will Medic slow down? And if he does slow down, is that when Puna's going to take over? So I'm not sold on either man at this point. But ultimately, what I'm feeling is that if Medic can try catching Punahele, I don't know how good Puna's chin is going to be at 170 because he hasn't really been tested in his debut at 170. He fought Miguel Baeza, and Miguel made it just look a little too easy for Puna. And the power from Puna just didn't seem to be there. He was hitting Baeza with a ton of shots, and Baeza, who is at this point, damaged goods, couldn't get stopped. So I'm going to lean Medic for that reason. I'm going to actually pick him to win by a second round knockout. I think he can catch him with something up the middle, being the taller guy. Very intrigued by this matchup because I do think that Puna is live, but could it just be, the veiled nature that I think that Uros Medic might have pretty shitty cardio? I'm not certain, right? I'm just not. Because if you look at those two juxtaposing fights, one, he's looking great on altitude. The other one, he's gassing out against a 155er. We'll see. But yeah, give me Medic at this point. Next bout, we've got the debut of Austin Bashi, or Bashi, minus 235 against C-Rod, Christian Rodriguez plus 195 at 145. So very quickly, I'm going to go with Bashi. And I'll explain why. I'm going to actually take him by a decision. The guy is incredibly talented, okay? He's undefeated. He's 3-0. I'm not saying I'm buying into the guy's hype. I think he's just the right guy at the right time to be Christian Rodriguez. And I will sing the praises of Rodriguez all day and night. The main factor about Christian, and if you've been watching me for a while, you might know, I like to break certain fighters down psychologically. And what I've noticed about Christian Rodriguez is that there's a certain frustration that I sense from him that tends to lead me to believe that with that frustration, he's going to lead himself to victory. As of late, unfortunately, I think he's finally accepted who he is, and he's come out as a heterosexual. And unfortunately, at that point, I think he's going to lose because I needed homosexually frustrated Christian Rodriguez. And when he is that sexually homosexual frustrated, that's when he has that little glimmer in his eye of like, ooh, if I wasn't closeted, I'd do certain things to you. And he likes to take it out on his opponents that way. But now that he's come out as a heterosexual, I don't think he has those feelings. I think, it's washed away that anger from him. And I'm not looking forward to betting him in this spot. But more realistically, of course, he is an absolute killer. I've been a fan of his from the beginning when he came in on short notice. And even when he beat up Tracy Cortez's brother, it was fantastic. This guy is very skilled, very dangerous with the chokes. Not much of a power puncher, but he's very, very good on the feet. And I like to attribute it to his very calm nature when he's striking. He's not throwing too much power. He's just kind of leading himself into the shots. Poking and prodding, very similar to how he used to do in the bathhouses. But with C-Rod, it's just that he is a true 135er, and he's fighting at 145 because he can't make the weight. With Bashi, I felt the same way about him. Like, this guy used to fight at 135, but when you compare their bodies, and I'm assuming Christian's going to be looking up and down at his body because the guy is jacked. He's a brick shithouse, this Austin Bashi. He's got the wrestling pedigree. He's got great grappling. The grappling background on this kid is great. I think his striking is serviceable enough to kind of go toe-to-toe with C-Rod. He's not going to be the better of the two. He won't be able to set up the same type of traps that Christian's going to do on the feet. But what is going to end up happening is that Bashi's going to be able to take this guy down, and it's going to be very similar to the fight against Rodriguez and Dogarian, except that Dogarian gassed out, kind of going a little too hard. Bashi is not going to gas out. He is he's got good cardio. He's got the fight IQ that I need to see to beat a guy like Christian Rodriguez, especially if you're going to grapple him. And on top of that, I think he's got the pedigree to not get caught in any sort of choke. He's just going to kind of ragdoll him around. I think he's going to win this one. He can definitely win this one by a submission, more than likely a rear naked choke. But I think Christian is definitely not a guy that's going to quit on himself. He's not going to put himself in any position to get submitted or choked out or at all pounded out. unless he does want to get pounded out, but that's going to be after the fight. But ultimately, give me Austin Bashi by a decision here. I'm not 100% sold on the kid, but I think at the very moment, he is the right guy to beat Christian Rodriguez. Some people might be salty still about that Bulgarian fight. Just picture the same thing happening, just that Austin Bashi's not going to tire himself out, just trying to dominate Christian, despite Christian enjoying it. I think Bashi's just going to rinse and repeat, strike with him for a bit, get control time, take him to the ground, more than likely slam him a few times. Not in that way, Christian, but, slam him to the mat. But yeah, give me Bashi by a decision. Next bout, we've got Roman Kopylov versus Chris Curtis at middleweight. Kopylov minus 265. Come back on the inaction man, plus 210 for Chris Curtis. He's coming off of a hamstring injury. Apparently it healed fine. At this point, if a guy like Kopylov, who is clearly the better striker, not the better boxer, of course, but the better striker, the better kicker, the longer of the two guys, despite the fact that he is 6 foot tall and action man here is 5'10", Kopylov, he's going to be at a slight reach disadvantage. I think if Kopylov here is just wanting to get the win against a top 13 guy, the game plan. We've seen it before. I've fallen for it in the past. Jack Hermansson's done it. Apparently, I didn't see the fight, but Bilal Muhammad's done it. You stay on the outside, kick the guy, make him frustrated. Easy day. It's just Kopylov himself. This could be a huge stunt for Kopylov. I just do not foresee it happening. Give me Kopylov by a decision. I would like to see a knockout, but again, just stay safe on the outside. For Curtis, if you're a Curtis backer, I understand he's going to try to attack the body of Kopylov, tire him out. He's got great body shots. I don't like a 37, nearly 38-year-old man coming off of a leg injury. I mean, he did look good against Brendan Allen, but man, Brendan Allen's been a fraud too. If I could spell fraud, I would spell it for you, but I can't. Ultimately, I'd give me Kopylov to win this one by a decision. Just stay on the outside, kick the man, use your speed, avoid any of that bum rushing from Chris Curtis, and it's going to be an easy night for you. Moving on, we've got Razak AlHassan versus Cesar Almeida. Minus 300 for Almeida. Come back on AlHassan is plus 240. I hate to admit this, but the narrative around this fight is probably what's going to lead me to go with AlHassan. A couple things. The plus 240, it's a bit off for me. I think it should be definitely lined a little closer than that, maybe plus 150 for AlHassan. I think the plus 240 is just kind of nuts. Cesar Almeida, I like Cesar a lot. I like the improvements he's been making, but ultimately he has not really fought anyone the caliber of AlHassan. AlHassan has fought much better competition. And the takedown ability, the judo background of AlHassan could make this such an easy fight for him to get back on track. Right? Yes, I think AlHassan at 40 years old, he's not the fighter he used to be, 100%. Cesar Almeida, much better striker. The issue is you don't always have to be the better striker to win in the striking. AlHassan has massive power. Not to say that I expect him to catch Cesar Almeida, who actually got dropped by Kopylov by him throwing a naked leg kick. Kopylov just caught him with a straight. If AlHassan hits any man, I think it's going to hurt him. But if this is Judo Thunder going back to his judo, I 100% see him taking him down and controlling him there if he needs to. This is one of the few occasions where he can dominate someone on the ground, because Cesar Almeida, I didn't like what I saw from him last. I truly did think his takedown defense and get-up game was getting improved, but that was against the cage. When you see it against Budka, he was against the cage. When he fought in the Contender Series against Fernando, against the cage, was able to reverse. I don't think he's going to be able to do that against AlHassan. As much as I want Almeida to win, just those odds, the minus 300 does not make sense to me. I have to go with AlHassan. I'm going to go by a decision here. I think he's just going to control him there. I think Cesar Almeida's tough. I think he is improving, but I need to see those improvements for my own of him being able to get up off of the mat in the center of the cage. If that is the case and he can't do so and he tries to, pull guard again, not pull guard, but go into full guard. God damn it. Yeah, just get full guard on him. I'm not a fan of that. I want to see him try to get back up, because all he did against Kopylov was kind of wait until the ref stood him up. And that's not going to work here against AlHassan, who's going to muscle him on the mat. So give me Razak AlHassan by a decision. I don't love that pick. I don't love it because I do see a possibility where if AlHassan just chooses not to grapple, because he hasn't really been doing it recently, I'm assuming maybe cardio issues, but if he chooses to strike with Almeida, despite Almeida not being much of a finisher when it comes to the power, I still think that Almeida can make it look pretty embarrassingly easy just by picking him apart, being the much cleaner striker. I like the way he doesn't overthrow things. He kind of keeps his eyes open. He's very, very good at just maintaining a very calm, collected manner and then finding his strikes that way. But ultimately, give me AlHassan for the love of God. If I do put money on you, wrestle. Next bout, co-main event, we've got Santiago Ponzinibbio versus Carlston Harris. It's a pick'em right now. I'm definitely afraid to go to the casino and find out what it really is because I'm going to go with Carlston Harris here to win within the first 2 rounds. Ultimately, my assessment of this fight is that Carlston Harris, despite how goofy he is on the feet, he's incredibly effective with that right hand. He's very long. He is not 6 foot tall. For sure, he's maybe 6'1", 6'2". Even more so, Ponzinibbio is not 6 foot tall. This man is like maybe 5'9", 5'10", and I have the proof. If you want to do the like put photos on the wall and like put string around him, the rabbit hole I fell down to is I saw Carlston Harris fight Shavkat Rakhmonov. And I'll probably spend more time disputing the height of Ponzinibbio than kind of giving you my thoughts on it. But anyways, Carlston Harris fought Shavkat Rakhmonov. You look at their face-off. Harris, maybe an inch or so, maybe very similar in height, not too far off. Now you see Shavkat fight Jeff Neal. Jeff Neal definitely shorter than Shavkat Rakhmonov. Now you see Ponzinibbio fight Jeff Neal. Ponzinibbio maybe an inch or two shorter than Jeff Neal. When I see these two face off, I would expect Carlston Harris to be significantly larger than Ponzinibbio, who is lying about his height at 6 foot tall. So I like, for one, Harris, his awkward, goofy striking, that goofy right hand. It's going to land on Ponzinibbio. His chin is just not the same. His durability has just not been the same for a long time. I like what he does. He still has the will to win. He will walk a guy down. He's the better counter striker. He definitely hits hard. But if he can't hurt Harris, and Harris has got some pretty bad defense, but it works for him. Just his size makes it difficult for certain people to land on him. And that's not to say that I don't think Ponzinibbio is going to land cleanly on him. I just don't think it's going to be enough to hurt Harris. If you're expecting him to get knocked out the similar way that Chaos Williams knocked out Harris, it's not the same kind of power. Harris one-shotting you is expected. He would probably retire Ponzinibbio. The fact that Harris kind of woke up immediately after hitting the ground, it's not bad. On top of that, Harris is just a newly minted black belt. We know how good his submission games are with the anaconda and the front chokes. The biggest issue I have here is that if I wanted to bet Harris inside the distance, picking which manner, I think he can do either one. I think if at one point he does hurt Ponzinibbio, which I fully expect him to do so with that looping right hand, he will either try to finish off with strikes similar to how he did the PFL light heavyweight champ at one point when he fought at 170 in Sanganine, landing punches. The issue is that I think Ponzinibbio is maybe his recovery is better than his durability because he's still able to recover. If that's the case, though, if Carlston is really wanting to show off that black belt, I'm going to lean by that submission. So give me Harris to actually be the first man to submit Ponzinibbio in an actual fight. So give me Harris by submission round number 1. I do think he will catch Ponzinibbio at one point, and then he will lock in that choke. And once it's locked in, it's very, very tight. Next bout, we've got the main event, Mackenzie Dern versus Amanada Ribas 2. And we've got Dern plus 175. Comeback on Ribas is minus 210. Now, if you go back and you watch their first fight, that to me was a masterpiece. And I go back and rewatch it often, but it is a masterpiece in the art of the jiggle from Mackenzie Dern. That is what birthed the term that I like to call big titty power from Mackenzie Dern. And you see the transition that we've seen from Mackenzie from that period to now, where not really much has changed. Really, it's similar game plan, try to get a takedown, and limited striking. What I will say about Mackenzie Dern, and let me start off with saying that I really do like Mackenzie. I've come to respect her a ton based off of her just tenacity to win, her willingness to do stuff similar to how I mentioned about Moises. She's the opposite of that. She can get her ass beat. This woman could take an ass whooping. She would be perfect in the 1950s as a housewife. That's how good of an ass whooping she can take. They will ask her, what happened to your eye? She will say, I fell. That's what kind of an ass whooping woman she's got. That mentality of, I will take it. But she will take a beating and she will keep going forward and make things happen for her, even though she probably knows she's going to lose. And that's what I like the most about Mackenzie Dern. Her improvements in the striking are there, but I still think they are very limited. Her striking looks good early, like the Loopy fight. A couple things that I loved about that. The jab was there. The aggression was there. The head movement wasn't. And at a certain point, she kind of regressed back to wild and crazy Mackenzie Dern. I wasn't a fan of that. What I did also like is that she got a double leg on Lupita Godinez, which was like, finally, you finally got it. Ultimately, though, Amanda Ribas dropping back down to 115. She's only lost once at 115, and that was to Marina Rodriguez, where she got knocked out. My biggest worry about the fight pre-tape was, what if Mackenzie Dern has finally improved enough with the striking that she can catch Amanda Ribas? Ultimately, my conclusion would have been that Amanda's footwork is just going to be superior to Mackenzie Dern. She's going to be able to actually get the takedowns if needed. And when I mentioned about top control and Trey Ogden, Mackenzie Dern, for me, lacks the ability to control someone on the mat, getting top control. She can definitely stay on somebody. It's just she rushes a little too much for my liking because she's so confident in her ability to get a submission, because it's fantastic, right? Her ground game is great. What I've seen from her in a majority of her fights is that once you kind of know what she's going for, you can negate it. And a girl with like Amanda Ribas with a black belt in jiu-jitsu, a black belt in pretty much everything, if I recall correctly, in Muay Thai. She's got a judo background herself. As long as Amanda does not put herself in any position to get submitted, she wins this fight. She keeps it on the feet. If she needs to get it to the ground, Mackenzie is live mainly because she's got the ability to just fight. And if she can catch Ribas, it would suck if you have money on her, but it's going to take that burst, that submission ability, that ability to try to hurt Ribas's chin, who, she's not the most durable, but she gets rocked mostly, but she is durable. I shouldn't say she's not. I've seen the girl get hurt and come back and win. But Ribas at this point, if she's on point, she's going to win this fight. I've got her by a decision here. Ultimately, I think she's the better fighter. She just doesn't have the rock-solid chin of Mackenzie Dern. I think her skill set's going to be able to negate everything that Mackenzie Dern has to offer. As much as I do love Mackenzie Dern, I even have a T-shirt coming out soon for purchase for Mackenzie Dern, once my website gets opened. But ultimately, as much as I love Mackenzie Dern, I have to be honest about her skill set, and it's just not there yet. Is this the fight where she's going to show me that she can maintain a nice composed jab and just try to keep her chin tight? Maybe, maybe not. I've seen it on multiple occasions where when she is getting landed on, she'll revert back to the chin up in the air, winging punches. And, Ribas's takedown defense is great. Mackenzie Dern's is not. That could be because she prefers to get taken down and work her game. I think ultimately, as long as Ribas is safe, she will win this fight. So give me Ribas by a decision here. Yeah, but that is my predictions for UFC Vegas 101 during Ribas 2. Let me know what you think about those predictions in the comments. Please leave a comment for sure. I like hearing from you people. As you can tell, I'm trying to make some adjustments and changes to the channel itself. And I actually had a new camera coming, but unfortunately did not get here on time. But look out for that if you're interested. Again, Johnny, TigerBomb MMA. Like, share, subscribe, and I will catch you in the next video.